Hey, this is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. Well, I don't know what I did, but somehow, for some reason, in my YouTube feed and on Twitter, I have been getting a lot of links to this new diet called the sugar diet. And the idea of it is that, you can lose weight and get six-pack abs by eating pretty much a very heavy carbohydrate diet and no saturated fat, which seems really odd, to be getting into somebody who's pretty much carnivore. But I looked into it a little bit, and the way I hear it described, I'm not sure, I'm not an expert on it, but the way I hear it described is, what they're doing is kind of the opposite of a low carb approach. They are eating high carb with very little fat, and that will work as far as weight loss is concerned. It's kind of like Penn Jillette, who lost a significant amount of weight doing the potato diet. And but all he was eating was potatoes, not potatoes with butter or sour cream or any fat, but just potatoes. And it's possible to do. In nature, carbohydrates do not come with fat. You have potato and you have ribeye. Ribeye comes with fat, but you will not find foods that mix carbohydrates and fats together. That is something that was created basically in kitchens. That's what makes ultra-processed food hyper-palatable. There's a combination that makes it just almost irresistible to people to avoid eating foods that are high in fat and carbohydrate at the same time. So for instance, it's darn difficult to overeat fatty ribeye steaks, or even trying to eat too many potatoes, but you put butter and sour cream on potatoes and gosh, you can eat tons of the stuff. Same thing with potato chips, same thing with almost virtually anything else. The combination of fat and carbohydrates makes things nearly irresistible to most people, and that's why we have a tendency to overeat those foods. And the food industry knows that. They work to try to create a bliss point of the right combination of carbohydrates and fat to make it absolutely delectable to us and addictive. And that's one of the reasons why it is so darn difficult to lose weight on a standard American diet, but it is possible to lose weight if you are eating a low carb approach, which would be very low carbohydrates and lots of fat, or eating lots of carbohydrates with almost no fat. Either way, you'll lose weight. Now the question is, what's the healthy diet? And frankly, we don't know. I mean, nobody knows what is the optimal diet for every human being on the planet. That knowledge just doesn't exist and will never be known, because it would require large numbers of identical twins, separated at birth, fed different diets, and see which ones had the fewest health problems and lived the longest. That's not going to happen. But what can you know? Well, frankly, I think you can pretty much make a pretty good estimate that the standard American diet and eating ultra-processed foods like we do is bad. And the reason why I think I can say that without any type of major scientific study is just by looking at the preponderance of the evidence, which would be us. Take a look at the health of America. I mean, we've got 80% of the population with some sort of chronic disease, type 2 diabetes, overweight, cancers going rampant, you name it, we've got it. And 80% of our calories that we consume are from ultra-processed foods. There seems to be a correlation between the amount of ultra-processed foods that we're eating and the amount of calories we're taking in, and more health problems. Is that evidence? Well, it depends on who you are. I mean, I have to make a decision on my health based on what is observable, what I can figure out, and that's really about all you can do. You can look at the evidence, that kind of shows that whole food ingredients, and I don't care if you're doing a Mediterranean diet, a carb diet, whatever. When you're eating pretty much single ingredient foods, the way, nature created it, that's when our ancestors ate. They didn't have these vegetable seed oils or industrial seed oils or whatever you want to call them. There wasn't a large amount of sugar out there. Vegetables came sporadically based on season, not being imported from all over the planet. So I have a tendency to think that we are really designed by our ancestors to eat primarily meat. But you know what? That's not always true, because there's people that live on Polynesian islands and stuff like that where they have an abundance of fruit constantly. Their only real protein is going to be coming from fish consumption, and a lot of their fat is going to come from coconuts and stuff like that. And and they did well. They survived, they thrived, they increased their population, etc. And for the most part, they were pretty healthy from what we can tell, until we introduced the standard of Western diet and started importing food to them. Other than that, it's other than the ultra processed food. Frankly, we've got studies, anthropological studies, that show that there are people that thrive almost strictly on completely meat and fat. The Maasai, the Inuit Indians, etc. And they did very well on that. Now, does that apply to you? Well, I did try at one time more of a sugary type diet. We had friends that had read the Garden of Eden diet. They were into it, and I should have looked at them because they were kind of sarcopenic, very thin neck. They always looked brittle, never looked particularly healthy, but for some reason, my now ex-wife decided that, we were going to do that, try it as a family. And so, we borrowed their juicer, we got fresh organic fruits and vegetables, and that's all we ate for a while, and I felt horrible. Every day I would wake up and it felt like the day after Halloween when you had way too much candy. I was just overloaded with sugar, and I gave up on the diet in a week because I gained like 10 pounds. And basically, what I was eating was the same stuff that, bears eat in order to get fattened up for the winter and hibernation. That's what was happening to me. And frankly, a high sugar diet really just doesn't work for me, whatever reason. Now, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work for everybody. Some people may do real well on a high carb diet, when they don't eat any fat. And, we'll see, as this movement progresses and more there are people that have tried it, see how they do. And there'll be people that it's kind of like what happened with the low carb world. It kind of started off as this little grassroots movement, took off over time, became kind of popular, and then people started sharing blood work, and then citizen scientists started tracking things, and we started getting more anecdotal evidence that kind of showed that it helped their health or didn't over time. Some of it we know with certainty that it doesn't work real well. Vegan diets cannot work without supplementation. You need vitamin B12, you need extra calcium, you need extra iron, and other supplementation in order to be able to eat pretty much plant-based. But and you can look and see the health problems that come from eating a strictly vegan diet over many years. Now, what will happen to a lot of people that try eating a vegan diet is they get off of a standard American diet and eat single whole foods, and they feel significantly better for maybe a year or two, for the most part, because they're off that ultra processed food. But after a while, if they survive, if they can somehow transition and they learn how to combine things and get enough protein, they might be able to survive on it. But frankly, most of the people that I see on a vegan diet over 5 years really look sarcopenic and pale and very little muscle tone. and and they start losing bone mass over time. So, I don't think that's the healthiest way to eat. But, look, I mean, if you want to eat a whole food Mediterranean diet, something with fish, whatever, you can eat the rainbow, as long as you're not eating ultra processed food. I think you're going to probably be healthier than 80% of Americans by any stretch of the imagination if you just stick to real food. I think there's some reasons why I like carnivore, mainly because it's healthy and it's easy, and that makes it really it works very well for my lifestyle, and I kind of like just having relatively small choices in foods. I like to be able to prepare it, and I can eat to satiety twice a day fairly easily. And because it's easy, I can stick to it. Okay, I'm not saying that it is the perfect diet. I'm not saying that everybody's got to do it. I'm just sharing my experience, strength, and hope with other people so that they may be willing to give it a shot. I mean, if you're feeling like crap, if you've got type 2 diabetes, if you've got all these health problems, then just switch to the whole foods for a couple of months. Give it a shot. And if it works for you, then stick with it. You don't have to do it to take care of a particular problem. Like, okay, I want to lose 40 pounds by bathing suit season. Well, you can do that with a sugar diet. You can do that with a low carb diet, whatever. But we're trying to find things that make us healthy in the long run. And if you want to be healthy in the long run, you need to eat single ingredient whole foods, get good sleep, and challenge your body with some form of exercise, usually resistance training or walking or whatever you can do. And the more you do it, the better in health is going to get, and a lot of the chronic diseases are going to go away. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore, wishing you a very healthy, happy day. If you've tried the sugar diet or people that have, please put those in the comments below. I'm curious about it. I'm not saying that they're wrong. I just don't have enough. I've only had one type of experience with it, and it wasn't good, but that was me. I try to put out a couple messages each week. If you like this message, please hit like and subscribe. Join this channel of other like-minded folks. I will talk to you again soon.